One of my most anticipated movies for the year was After the Hunt by Luca Guadagnino, and while I can't really say it's a great film, it was pretty disappointing. There are a lot of elements to it that really work, but there's a lot of elements that also drag it down a lot. Like I said, there's a lot to get into. That's why I kind of wanted to make a separate video for this film. This one's more going to be me breaking down the plot points. It's a bit easier for me to go down the different plot beats of the film to kind of explain my praises and criticisms with this film because it's a lot of mixed emotions, really. So, yeah, let's just get into it. The core concept of this film revolves around a student at Yale who experiences a traumatic event by a professor, which I'm not really going to go into detail what it is exactly, just in case YouTube might get me over that. But I think if you know what this film is about, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, um, that happens to her, and then the rest of the film is kind of going on about what happens after and what happens with her mentor character, played by Julia Roberts, and kind of the back and forth between generational gaps, different how different generations react to situations of this nature and how we talk about it. So we open with Julia Roberts' character Alma, a professor, going through a dinner party. There's actually a really interesting use of sound in this scene where the sounds of like a clock ticking are present and kind of overtaking the sound design in that scene. I really liked that choice. It was very the whole film is kind of thriller, kind of going for like a thriller vibe. So I did like that choice. That was a very a lot of the sound and technical aspects of this film are very good. You'll hear me talking about that a lot, but that was just one little detail that's very it was a very wise decision, and it's clear that you can see within Luca Guadagnino's filmography that that's something he just really strives for, that very perfectionist technical aspects. So she's at the dinner party with her and her husband, Frederick, and the professor, Hank Gibson, played by Andrew Garfield, very well, actually. He's probably the best performance in the film. And the PhD student, Maggie, uh, played by Ayo Edebiri. And in this scene, you kind of get an opening for the themes of the film. They're talking about generational differences, and they're going into detail about some of the differences that they have considering their age. And by the end of this scene, we see Maggie and Hank leaving the building, and this sets up the major conflict and event of this film. So, in terms of like setup and what'll pay off at the very end of this film, I believe the opening scene is pretty good for this film. I like how it sets things up there just very quickly. It gets into the main conflict very quickly. There's just lots of room for inference before the actual reveal happens. So by this point, we're at the next day, and we see Maggie absent from Alma's class, and we learn of what happened and what Maggie is telling Alma in the situation, and she has an interesting discussion with her. Essentially, a bit of back and forth before Maggie leaves after she decides that Alma is unsupportive. Uh, and after Alma goes ahead and speaks to Hank in a restaurant, he denies the allegation, and we learn that he believes that Maggie is making it up because of an accusation that he created that she was plagiarizing an assignment. So, kind of a setup for what will come later with this character. Andrew Garfield's probably the most interesting character in this film. I like Andrew Garfield and pretty much everything he's in. He's a very established actor, and he's the best performance in this, I say, because unfortunately the performances are something that's a bit inconsistent in the film, but it's weird because it's one of those things where I'll touch on this more later, but it's interesting because it feels like some of the reasons the characters were acting the way they were was more so a reason of how they were directed, if you know what I mean. So I'm not entirely sure if it's the actor's fault, but nevertheless. In the aftermath of this conflict, Hank ends up being fired, and he is angry at Alma because of her failure to stand up for him after the aforementioned restaurant scene. And I forget if this was before or after Hank gets fired, but Maggie mentioned how she's pressing charges and going forward with legal action after her after the traumatic event with Hank. And Alma is not for this idea, as she is more so warning Maggie about this, and she tells Maggie more so in a way to not go through with this. So after this scene, we meet the psychiatrist, Dr. Kim Sayers, who is played by Chloe Sevigny. Sevigny, I believe that's how you say her last name. Who has spoken to Maggie about the case, which she has gone public with the allegation at this point in the Daily News. And something else that happens with Maggie is that she's ends up translating a newspaper clipping that was in German that revealed an accusation by Alma of her father's friend raping her. But afterwards, in a state of she's either sick or hungover, I forget which one. But we keep seeing scenes of her popping her prescription pills, and we come home to find her husband watching on a porn site on his laptop after he fell asleep. And we also learn a little bit more about the two's dynamic. And so we go back to Alma and Maggie, who took the newspaper clipping out of concern for Alma. However, she's not happy about this, as she believes that this is an invasion of her privacy, which we reveal a little bit more about Alma's character, how she's not really the best person after she's been using another person's name to have access to her prescriptions that she uses throughout the film. So I think this is a pretty good time to stop here and discuss some of the things I like about this film. It's shot very well. A lot of great cinematography, blocking and framing are used very well. Power dynamics, how it reveals people that are dominant in the situation, people that have power over others, and just how important blocking really is to when you're framing a scene. And it's Luca Guadagnino has a very good understanding of this, and it's clear in his work. So it's something that should be the norm for filmmaking, but if you watch enough bad movies, then I guess it's something like that is something you shouldn't take for granted. Whenever this film has to address certain characters having more power over each other, the framing and blocking are used in a very creative way to enhance the scene and just make it a visual, just a visually interesting scene to look at. So we get kind of a back and forth scene between Maggie and Alma, who are criticizing each other. Eventually, this escalates into her saying that no one will believe Maggie's allegation against Hank, and then that's when Maggie slaps her. And then, in an interesting scene, we see Alma going back to her apartment, and she finds Hank sleeping there, which the two go start talking. They have a drink together, and one of the things that brought up is the plagiarism accusation, how Hank isn't happy that he could have used the support from Alma. And we learn a little bit more about the situation from Hank's perspective, is that he admits to flirting with his students, but he again denies the allegation by Maggie. And when talking about this, some more information is revealed about Alma and Hank, is that they had an affair, and that was a professional boundary that was obviously broken. And with Hank trying to get more intimate with Alma, the scene ends up with her rejecting it, and she's forced to push him. She has no choice but to just push him out of the way, which um obviously very more telling information for us to obviously empathize with Maggie in this situation, but also just kind of reiterate what's been said and show it firsthand from what Alma experienced. And then when she returns to campus, we learn about a Rolling Stone article with Maggie criticizing how Yale handled this situation. And we see a group of student protesters, which includes her partner Alex. And Alma is confronted by these student protesters, which she ends up collapsing, and we view her in the hospital, where it's revealed what happened to her as a teenager. That she was in love with a friend of her father's, and there was an intimate relationship that began, but the man decided to end it and be with a woman that was his age, and that was when Alma accused him of abuse. And she tries to deny it, but this leads to the man that we're talking, the man committing suicide. And since obviously she's so young, Frederick's trying to convince her that the man was responsible, obviously, because of how young she was. So then we do a 5-year time jump where we fast forward to early 2025, the current year, and we learn that Alma is now a dean. And there's a little scene in a cafe or restaurant or coffee shop where her and Maggie meet up, and we learn that this is a situation where she moved on, and she's now happy. And after Alma reveals that she wrote an article to try to help out her career more positively. Maggie believes it's more of a performative move to get her to the goals that she wants to get eventually, to the position she wants to get eventually. However, even after she's critical, she just admits that she doesn't feel strongly about it anymore. And after the two apologize, she reluctantly congratulates her, and then they both leave. So that's basically the whole film. I'm just reading the IMDb synopsis, but the reason I went through it that way is because when looking at my notes, pretty much the only things I noted down were the technical aspects, which are definitely things I want to talk about, because it's something that's very important to film. It's very important for film. However, I do kind of wonder if like Justin Kuritzkis script would have made this any better, or just a different writer because really that's the biggest issue with this film is the writing. The technical aspects do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that shouldn't be the entire film, if you know what I'm talking about. Then there's also one of my other major flaws is that this film kind of had some weird it didn't I could it was clear it didn't really know what it wanted to be when it came to the like what it was saying. There's a bit of some muddled themes of the movie that I think were just never really explored in depth, in like that were never really explored full on, and just kind of ends up being a weird, like, centrist kind of look at it, which isn't exactly a bad thing. Something that also gets that critique is the film Eddington, which came out earlier this year, which I really liked that film. I don't need everything in a film to like tell me exactly what is right and wrong. Obviously, a lot of films are great at the kind of gray area narrative. However, when you're making a film like this, of this nature, of this subject matter, you kind of want to have that aspect of where you're siding with these characters, in my opinion. So I just found it very weird. And admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of like generational differences in film and how it's portrayed by, not to say it's impossible, but when older directors kind of tackle this subject matter, it's sometimes not the most nuanced, or it's a bit preachy, or just kind of just creates more stereotypes. And a lot of this film lacks nuance with that. There's a lot of very one-dimensional like characters that are of a younger age that just kind of seem like stereotypes and just aren't really creating anything new or saying anything new. And with that, it just created some unlikable moments from some of the characters who I know in the moment are kind of supposed to have their, oh, are you rooting for them? Are you on this side? Are you on this side? There's this certain point where it just kind of gets annoying with the main character, Alma. Like, I wasn't really the biggest fan of her character very much. Like, I know the point is for her to be kind of a shitty person, but at the same time, I didn't really think Julia Roberts sold it very well. And a lot of times I just thought that her performance was strangely cartoonish. I'm not really sure if that's a fault of the directing or how she decided to go about her acting, but I was just not really into that very well. Ayo Edebiri was fine. I like her a lot as an actor. I just feel like in this film she didn't really have much to do or go the extra mile with her performance. Andrew Garfield, I said, is easily the best performance in the film, and Chloe Sevigny does a pretty good job too. And the actor that plays Frederick, the husband. Yeah, those were my main gripes with the film. I guess to talk more about the positives. There was a few songs by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that were used in the film that were very good as usual. They make great stuff. And yeah, like I said, it's a very well shot film. Like, I mean, I guess it's a pretty pretty harsh thing to say, but honestly, if I was watching this film on mute, I think I would enjoy it a lot just by how it looks. It's kind of like how Spielberg blocks his movies. Like, you can watch those on mute and like still get a very clear perception of what's happening. It's very well done. And yeah, like with some of the performances, the film was just inconsistent overall. I don't know. Yeah, this was one I was really disappointed by, honestly. However, I still think it just gets that extra mile because of the filmmaking techniques and how, unfortunately, it's kind of something that we can't really take for granted anymore sometimes. But yeah, in terms of technical stuff, I love it in this film. It's very well done. But yeah, unfortunately, the writing and kind of the strange ways that the film goes about commentary in the film was just kind of strange and unsuccessful, in my opinion. This is not really a film I'd return to, which is sad for me to say because like I said, I love Luca Guadagnino. I don't know if I stated that clearly in the beginning of the review, but I love his work. Maybe he's just pumping out stuff too quickly. I think maybe he just needs to go back to Justin Kuritzkis, maybe, or just with a different writer. But a lot of this review sounds very harsh. Like, I don't hate this film. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 in total because just of how like well done the movie is. It's a very well made film, and you have to appreciate that today. Overall, not a bad film. I would say I recommend it overall for Luca Guadagnino fans. It's just not something I can say is an amazing film. So, thanks for watching. Those are my thoughts on After the Hunt, Luca Guadagnino's new film. If you like this video, give it a like. If you want to see more from me, subscribe. I try to upload some shorts every single day just because I can't be recording long videos all the time. But, anyways, thank you.